I checked the entire apartment but found nothing out of place except for a single envelope, again on the floor. Inside was another photograph, this time of me sleeping, taken from a close angle. On the back, the same chilling message: I'm watching you. I've always been a night owl, preferring the quiet solitude of the late hours to get my work done. As a freelance writer specializing in exploring and documenting abandoned buildings, I find inspiration in the eerie silence of the deserted places. A few months back, I moved into the View Apartments on Kinnickinnick Avenue in Milwaukee. It's a relatively quiet neighborhood, and I enjoyed the peace it brought. One evening around 6 p.m., I laced up my running shoes for my daily jog. The suncast was warm, golden glow over the city, a perfect prelude to my nocturnal writing sessions. As usual, I packed my essentials: a water bottle, flashlight, pepper spray, and a survival knife. Precautions I took seriously. Despite living in a good part of town, Milwaukee is still a big city and you can never be too careful. With some combat training under my belt, albeit a bit rusty, I felt relatively safe. Jogging down Kinnickinnick Avenue, the streets were winding down from the day's bustle. I turned onto Becker Street, where the old industrial buildings, mostly abandoned, dotted the area. One building in particular always piqued my curiosity. It's the old Filer and Stoll complex, an abandoned boat factory about a third of a mile from my apartment. The place had been empty for years, and I've never seen any activity there. Given my line of work, I was really itching to explore it to see if I could squeeze a story out of it. Usually, I'd get the necessary permits, but the process was time-consuming and never guaranteed. Tonight, I decided to take a closer look. Approaching the warehouse cautiously, I scanned the area for any signs of police or passersby. The main entrance was too exposed, so I circled the building until I found a broken window partially hidden by some stacked pallets. Carefully, I climbed over them and then slipped inside. Yeah, I know it's illegal, but I'll take my chances. The sun casting long shadows through the windows, giving the space a haunting glow. Inside, the air was musty and faint, and the smell of decay lingered, reminiscent of an old, damp basement. My footsteps echoed into the vast, empty space as I navigated through the maze of old machinery, graffiti walls, and stacks of crates. Feeling more confident, I took out my flashlight. Around me, there were rusted tools, decaying workbenches, and forgotten stacks of paperwork. This is my kind of place. Deeper into the building, I discovered a small office at the back of the warehouse. The worn wooden door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open, I peered inside, and the room was cluttered with papers, broken office supplies, and a whole bunch of garbage. In the center of the room was a metal table with odd symbols scrawled in red. I noticed something that sent a chill down my spine. A dead rat, sliced open from throat to tail with dried blood forming the symbols. Candles circled the macabre scene, and next to the rat was this old leather-bound book. What the hell? And it was open to a page filled with these strange symbols and scribbles. My heart raced as I scanned the room, looking for any sign of who might have been there. Suddenly, I heard a noise behind me. I spun around quickly, pulled out my knife at the ready, but there was no one. The warehouse was now silent. All you could hear was the faint hum of the distant city. I decided it was my time to leave. I backed out of the office and retraced my steps through the warehouse, trying to keep my breathing steady. Just as I reached the broken window I climbed in, I heard a voice. A soft whisper, almost inaudible. It was coming from somewhere in the warehouse, but I just couldn't pinpoint which direction it was coming from. My heart pounded as I carefully climbed back out the window and made my way to the street. I jogged back to my apartment, glancing over my shoulder every few steps. Once inside, I locked the door and leaned against it, trying to calm my nerves. My mind was racing with all these kinds of questions, like who had been in the warehouse? Why were those strange symbols there with the dead rat? And what was up with that creepy book? Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I kept my curtains closed and avoided going out at night. Then, one morning, I noticed something really odd. My kitchen chair had been moved. I've always kept my chairs neatly pushed in, but this one was pulled out as if somebody was just sitting there. I brushed it off, thinking I might have done this absentmindedly. But it didn't stop there. A few days later, I found a picture frame in the living room turned around. It was a photo of me with some friends, now facing the wall. That's when I started to get really paranoid. And this was something I knew I didn't touch. Then, one evening, I received an envelope underneath my door. Inside was a single photograph of me taken the night that I went to the warehouse. On the back of the photo was a message scrawled in red ink, "I'm watching you." My heart pounded as I flipped through the other photos. Each one was taken inside my apartment while I was sleeping or working or even in the shower. I felt utterly violated. I called the police, but they didn't find any fingerprints or evidence. The feeling of being watched intensified, and I couldn't shake the fear that somebody was always there, just out of sight. One night, I woke up to the sound of my front door creaking open. I grabbed my knife and my flashlight. My heart was pounding in my chest. I slowly crept out of the room, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness, but no one was there. I checked the entire apartment, but found nothing out of place except for a single envelope, again on the floor. Inside was another photograph, this time of me sleeping, taken from a close angle. On the back, the same chilling message, "I'm watching you." I started to feel like I was losing my damn mind. I installed extra locks on my doors and windows, but it didn't make me feel any safer. The next night, I decided to set up a hidden camera in my living room. I needed to catch whoever was doing this. I stayed up late watching the feed on my laptop, but nothing happened. Exhausted, I must have finally drifted off to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I checked the footage right away. At around 3 a.m., the screen flickered, and there he was, a shadowy figure standing in the middle of my living room, staring directly at the camera like a creep. He didn't move for what felt like an eternity, just stood there watching. His face was obscured, even with the high-definition feed, making it impossible to identify him. Then the screen went black. Panic set in immediately. I packed a bag with essentials and decided to leave the apartment for good. As I was about to walk out the door, I noticed another envelope. Inside was a photograph of me taken from behind as I was packing my bag. The message on the back read, "You can't hide." I ran the hell out of that apartment, not looking back. I drove to a friend's house on the outskirts of the city, and I stayed there for a few nights. The first night, I couldn't sleep at all. I was just too scared and paranoid to even try to close my eyes. The second day, my friend tried to reassure me, but it was no use. And by the third day, I found a note slipped under the door. It read, "You can't run from me." The feeling of safety that I had over at my friend's house evaporated. I knew I had to leave Milwaukee altogether. I contacted my landlord, explained the situation, and I had to break my lease. Losing my security deposit was really painful, especially since the apartment managers were genuinely nice people who had never dealt with anything like this before. They were pretty sympathetic, even though they had no solutions or answers for something like this. I moved to a new city, and no, I'm not going to tell you where it is, but it's far from Milwaukee. I changed my phone number and tried to start over. I hoped the distance would keep me safe, but the fear never went away. Even now, in the new apartment, I find myself looking over my shoulder. It's a fear that never truly goes away, and it's a reminder that sometimes the scariest things are the ones that are all too real. Weeks go by. One evening, as I was trying to write, I heard a soft knock on my door. My heart leapt to my throat. I checked the peephole, but there was no one there. I waited a few moments before cautiously opening the door, only to find another envelope on the floor. My hands trembled as I picked it up and opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with a message that said, "I'm closer than you think." I slammed the door shut, my mind racing. How could they have found me so quickly? I double-checked all the locks and sat on my couch, trying to steady my breathing. The sense of vulnerability was suffocating. I felt trapped in my own home, unable to escape the unseen eyes watching my every move. The following night, I decided to confront my fear head-on. I stayed up, hidden in the dark, watching my door. I wanted to catch whoever was doing this. As the hours ticked by, my nerves started to fray, but I remained vigilant. Around 3 a.m., I heard the faintest sound, a soft scratching at my door. I gripped my pepper spray, flashlight, and grabbed my knife. My heart was pounding in my chest. Then, suddenly, the scratching stopped. I heard footsteps retreating down the hallway. I swung the door open, but the hallway was empty, and on the floor was another envelope. This time, the envelope contained something different. It was a USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop with trepidation. The drive contained a single video file. I clicked on it, my screen filling the footage of my new apartment. The video showed me going about my daily routine, cooking, working, even sleeping. The realization that someone had been inside my apartment filming me, doing all this stuff, sent a wave of nausea through my body. The last frame of the video was a close-up of my face taken as I slept. The image was accompanied by a chilling message that said, "Sleep tight." I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. I got up, packed everything that I could, called a friend in another city explaining the situation, and thankfully they offered me a place to stay. I left that very second, taking a circuitous route to avoid being followed. At my friend's place, I felt a brief respite from the constant fear, but it didn't last. After a few days, I found another note slipped underneath the door, and it read, "You can't run from me." Are you serious? I didn't feel safe anywhere. The fear was an all-consuming constant presence that was slowly gnawing at my sanity. I was really jumpy, and my friend tried his best to reassure me, but the terror was overwhelming. Moving just wasn't an option at this point. With the current cost of living, finding a new place would be nearly impossible without some significant financial strain, and I couldn't afford that. I contacted the police again, hoping they could provide me with some assistance. When the officers arrived, they listened to my story intently. "Look, we're doing everything we can," one of them reassured me. "We'll increase patrols in your area and keep a closer eye on things. But you need to understand, we're stretched thin right now." So, as you could imagine, their words did little to comfort me. I felt like I was at the mercy of a relentless predator with no escape in sight. Days turned into weeks, and the stalking continued. Each new message, each new photograph pushed me closer to the edge. My mental state was deteriorating rapidly. I was a prisoner in my own home, consumed by fear and paranoia. Then one night, everything came to a head. I was sitting at my desk, trying to write, when I heard a noise outside my window. My heart pounded as I grabbed my knife and flashlight. I slowly crept to the window and peered out, my breath now catching in my throat. And there, in the darkness, was the shadowy figure. He stood still, watching me. I mustered all my courage and burst through the door, yelling for him to stop. He turned and fled, but I was determined to catch him this time. I chased him down the street, adrenaline pumping through my veins. As we rounded a corner, I saw a police car parked nearby. I shouted for help, and the officers quickly intervened, tackling the man to the ground. They cuffed him and pulled him to his feet, the streetlight illuminating his face for the very first time. He was gaunt with wild eyes and a crazed expression. I think I recognized him from news reports. He's an escaped mental patient notorious for committing murders in the name of Satan. He had been stalking his victims, gathering photographs and mementos, trying to complete some twisted ritual. The police later confirmed that he had killed several people and was planning to make me his very next victim. His goal was to conjure the spirit of Satan by sacrificing one more person, and that was me. The police found a makeshift altar in his hideout, along with these notes detailing his plan. The realization that I had been his target sent chills down my spine. The officers reassured me that he would be locked away for good this time, but the damage was already done. The fear, the paranoia, the constant feeling of being hunted, it had all taken its toll on me. Even now, with him behind bars, the fear never goes away. Every knock on the door, every unexpected sound sends a jolt of terror through me. I've lost count of how many nights I've spent sleepless, staring at the ceiling, listening for any sign of an intruder. Well, this is my new life now. A constant battle against the lingering fear. The sense of vulnerability of being completely at someone else's mercy is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. It's a fear that consumes every part of who you are. It's a fear that seeps into every aspect of your life. I have to remind myself daily that he's behind bars and that he can't hurt me anymore.
Now, listen closely. If you value your sleep, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment below and share your own chilling story. Sleep tight.